Okay, so at this time, I'd like to turn the program over to Terry Venable, Director of Student Activities.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Ms. Marable indicated, I'm Director of Student Activities, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our program tonight. As being director, you move around and you move fast. So please forgive me, but please sit back and enjoy, because we have some outstanding panelists this evening, and our MC will be Xavier Andrew, our Mr. NSU. Thank you so much, and please enjoy.
What's up, Spartan family? My name is Xavier Andrew, and I will be your host for this evening, and I humbly serve as the 17th Mr. Norfolk State University for the 2019 and 2020 academic school year. You are here for your vote is your voice. Do not be silent. So let's jump right in and meet our panelists. Our first panelist we'll be meeting is Miss Angela Williams-Gray. Next up will be Dr. Richard James.
How you doing?
How you doing? Next up, we have Dr. Robert K. Perkins. And next up, we have the best baller is Cal O'Quinn. And we have a good friend of mine, Simone Thomas. So let's give a round of applause for all of our panelists today. And we're gonna jump right on in. Every American can register to vote by the age of 18 in all states. Question 1, give us a story about your most memorable or most important vote you have cast. Starting with Miss Angela Williams-Gray.
So good evening, everyone. It is an honor to be here. I thank you so much for you all inviting me to participate. My most memorable occasion, there are two. When Doug Wilder ran for governor, he was the first Black governor in Virginia, and I was 17 and I couldn't vote for him. And I was so disappointed that I could not vote for him, that on my 18th birthday, that election was in November. And on my 18th birthday, I cut class from Booker T. Washington High School, and I walked across the street to the library and I registered to vote. I was raised in a voting household, in a socially active household, and so I just could not wait to be able to vote. And then again, some decades later, to be able to vote for Barack Obama was also amazing. And it was also amazing for my, at the time, 75-year-old mom, who never thought that she would live long enough to see a Black person to become president of the United States. So those are my memorable events with regard to voting.
Thank you, Ms. Graves. Next up, Dr. Richard Jones.
James, that's Richard James, and
Richard James, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the election, the 2008 election of one of the smartest presidents that we've had in the United States history was the 44th president of the United States, President Barack Obama. And that was a very, very important election for me in my lifetime, because I would never believe that a Black person would be president of the United States. And then a lot of significant things happened during that election. For the first time, we had 4 states in the United States of America that voted Democratic for that particular election. And President Obama won both the Electoral College plus the popular vote. And he is probably one of the most qualified presidents that we've ever had. Very proud of that election. Of course, it's a night that we all will remember for the rest of our lives. And I was very, very proud to be president and to vote for the 44th president of the United States of America.
Thank you, Dr. James. Dr. Perkins?
I agree with the two panelists ahead of for the most memorable. But I want to talk about my most important vote. And that was when I was living in the state of Iowa. Iowa, 6% of the population. Blacks were 2.6 of the population. We had a young man, black male, to run for councilman in our district. And the black student body was so excited. We galvanized, we went out there, we voted, and we made sure he got in, and he did. Why is this the most memorable? Because he did not hold the black agenda at all. He did not support any black causes. He was almost the antithesis of being black in America. Why was that the most important vote? Because I voted based on what I saw without going to find out what the issues were, where they stood. I saw the race and I said, well, he have to be for what I am for. And I realized from that moment on, my vote is worth more than the color of the skin. I have to know what these people stand for. So that's my most important vote. Voting for the wrong person.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Mr. O'Quinn? We're going to come back to you. Ms. Thomas?
Okay, so unfortunately, I didn't have the honor to vote for President Obama in 2008. I was only 8 years old, but I do remember sitting on my couch and my grandmother and my father, who come from those generations during the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, who would never think to see a black man in office, watching them cry. I remember sitting on that couch and my mother making me watch his inaugural address from start to finish at 8 years old. That is the most memorable, but the most memorable for me that I actually got to vote in, I was 18, it was a mayoral election. I didn't know anything, all I know is that I wanted to do something. I couldn't just sit here and be like, okay, I'm in school, we just get to skip school because it's time to vote. I knew that, okay, do I know these people? Because I'm from Killeen, Texas, and for those of you who don't know, Killeen, Fort Hood, dead in the middle of Texas, and it's pretty red. Super red. There's a lot of us, but it's super red. And those candidates running for mayor in 2018 did not look like us, but I remember his name, Jose Segarra. He was a Hispanic man. I saw him in the high schools. I saw him at our volleyball games. He was a man of the community. And that's when I figured out that, okay, he doesn't have to be Democrat, Republican in this specific race. He just has to care about our community and what happens to me. So that's my most significant voting experience.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. Jumping right into our next topic. Civil rights activists such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Congressman John E. Lewis, and Fan Lou Hamer fought and lost their lives to help guarantee the right to vote for African Americans and all citizens. How important is it that we honor that sacrifice today by registering to vote and exercising our right to vote as often as possible? Starting with Ms. Graves.
Well, I think it's very important that we honor their sacrifice, but I think it's more important that we just look around at what's actually happening now and understand that leadership matters. I often use the analogy that if you go into a store and the people in the store are rude and you ask to speak to the manager and then you get the manager and the manager is rude, well, then you understand where the people get it from. They get it from the manager. So leadership matters. And I think that I'm certain that if all of those individuals that you named could roll over in their graves, they probably would be doing so right now at the amount of apathy that we have seen in the past with regard to voting. So it is very important for us to not only honor their legacy, but stand where we are and take a look around where we are and see what's happening. And if you want what's happening to continue, then either you can vote for the current administration or you cannot vote at all. But if you want something to change, then you have to vote. it's important that people understand that everything isn't always going to go the way they want it to. And just because one person doesn't vote on one issue or two issues the way that you think that they should, look at their overall track record and look at, as Ms. Thomas said, look at how people are in the community and see, do they care? We're not always going to agree on everything, but it is important. And I will say this last thing, if it weren't so important, if it didn't matter, people would not be jumping through to keep you from doing it. Remember that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Graves. Dr. James?
You know, we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King in the question, and others that were people who led the way for civil rights and the civil rights movement. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King knew that the nonviolent movement for civil rights and equality and fundamental fairness would make a difference in people's lives for generations to come. And he really pushed for nonviolent. In some of the conversations, you read his letters, read his books, he knew that the nonviolent way was the best way to advocate for civil rights and equality. And I agree with Dr. King that violence is not the answer to our social ills today. However, I agree that we should be using the most powerful tool that we have to our disposal, and that's the United States Constitution, as the basis of our arguments, which is well articulated. And then we also must be electing people of good character. People of good character are going to make sure that we have a guaranteed fundamental fairness for all. I'm proud to be a representative of the NAACP that has played a vital role in the civil rights movement and the pursuit of equality and justice under the law. You know, the NAACP has a special charter in which we advocate for members of a protected class. And who are those members of a protected class? That is designated by the United States Supreme Court. That is all women, all children, all persons with disabilities, all senior citizens, and all minority groups. And so we take that very, very seriously. Some of you guys may also know that in that fight for justice, that even the Norfolk branch of NAACP argued for the Norfolk State student that was viciously attacked by a Norfolk police dog. Once we got involved, that case was dismissed in 6 days, and then her injuries were taken care of, and we pursued justice. That's the things that we are fighting for. Those are the things that Martin Luther King Jr. and others wanted us to do, and we need to continue those marching orders by making sure that we elect people and we vote for people of good character.
Dr. Perkins?
Yes, it is always difficult to follow Professor James, always. So I try to avoid following him when I can. I want to respond to this question, but Xavier, I was wondering if we could deviate just for a moment. We have some really heavy hitters on this panel.
Yes.
And I would like to take a time for them to introduce themselves and their accolades and why they're invited on this panel, and then I can come back and respond to that question. Because when you got folks like Councilwoman Graves on your panel, you have to let the folks know what we have. So is it okay if we do that and I can come back?
Yes, of course. Yes, sir. Ms. Graves, right.
Well, my name is Angela Williams Graves. I am born and raised and a native of the city of Norfolk. I love it here. I often describe it as the great, wonderful, fabulous, exciting, and ever-changing city of Norfolk. I have had the privilege over the last 10 years and 4 elections to serve and to have been voted onto and re-elected to the city council in Norfolk. And so I understand. I will tell you, my very first election was a and it was in a congressional year. And for council, it was a special election because we're not normally elected in November. So there was the congressional election. There are some other, I don't even remember who else on the ballot. Then there were some amendments to the Constitution. And then at the time I went married, my last name was Williams. And so they put you on the ballot by alphabetical order. So I was the last person on the last page of the last ballot of the election. I still won. And so that is how important it is for people to vote, because it matters. It absolutely matters. And so I am grateful for being here. I am an entrepreneur. I've been selling residential real estate for the last 12 years, just reopened my own firm, Homes by Angela Realty Company, shameless plug. But in addition to understanding the social issues, we also are addressing things that pertain to like redlining and the wealth gap of African Americans as it relates to home ownership. So I am really excited to be here and grateful to be a part of this wonderful panel and to have this opportunity to have this discussion.
Such an honor to meet you, Ms. Graves, too. Richard James.
Yes, well, my name is Richard James. I'm the youngest of 6 children. I'm proud to say that my mother is on the wall at the New Slover Library as one of the first African-American women to graduate from the Norfolk General Hospital School of Nursing. I wasn't born when she graduated from the school, but I'm the youngest of 6 children. And unfortunately, I never had an opportunity to meet my father. I knew that as a young man, growing up poor in Lambert's Point, without a father, that no one was going to come to rescue me. And I had to do what Barack Obama said, I had to rescue myself. And the only way I can do that was through education. And so although they thought I wasn't smart enough to finish Maury High School, I graduated from Maury High School at the age of 16. The day after I turned 17, I enlisted into the United States Army as a combat airborne medic. On my 18th birthday, I was in the Republic of Korea, flying on medevacs, saving soldiers' lives at 18 years old. And then I came back to the United States to serve with the 82nd Airborne Division, the American Guards of Honor. And I was very, very proud of that as an 18-year-old and a veteran of the United States military. When I got out of the military, my veterans advisor asked me what I wanted to do and asked me to take a test for the Norfolk Police Department, which I did. I took that test and I didn't think I was gonna be selected as a minority because at that time, Norfolk Police Department only had 14 Black minority officers on the department. And we had 400 people taking the test at the arena in Norfolk. Out of the 400 people, they hired 16. I was one of the 16. And I served on the Norfolk Police Department for 27 years. While on the police department, I got my bachelor's degree in administration, a master's degree in government and forensic science, and a law degree. I became the department head of Tidewater Community College, teaching forensic science. And one of my professors in forensic science was Dr. Spitz, who did the autopsy on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we talked about today, and John F. Kennedy. And he just sent me an autographed book of his new book that he did on the medical legal cause of death. As the department head of Tidewater Community College, we started and instituted forensic science, public law, and we started training smart people to go into law enforcement and the social sciences. Very, very proud of that. The sheriff of the Norfolk, the sheriff of the city of Norfolk asked me to come and work with him in the Norfolk City Jail to give back to the community and leave my job as a department head at Tidewater Community College and take a pay reduction, which I did. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud to say that the Norfolk City Jail now has more inmates that have graduated with their GED than any other time in the history of the Norfolk City Jail. And that's making a difference in people's lives. That's making our community safe. I can go on and on and on about those things, but it's not about you know, what we do. It's all about what we do for others. You know, as chairman of the NAACP legal redress team, I remember getting the phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning from the city chief of police about police-involved shootings. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, with all the rioting and fighting across the country over police-involved shootings and excessive force and the like, and over the monuments, you have not seen that in the city of Norfolk, Virginia. Why is that? It's because of partnerships. It's because of responsible leaders. It's because of the city manager, the city mayor we have, the city council members. And we get together to resolve our differences. And we have to do it in a way like Martin Luther King said. He said we need to do it in a non-violent way and use our intelligence and the United States Constitution to fight for us. And it wins. It has the United States Constitution has no bearing on any person, whether you're race or national origin, religion, or the like. And in the United States of America, a poor boy from Lambert's Point can grow up to be a veteran, a leader in the community, and live the American dream. Only in the United States of America can that happen. And one of the things I remember as a young man talking to my brothers, that me and my brothers all agreed that as men, we would never leave our children, because that's part of the social ills that we're dealing with today. We have a lot of families that fathers are not doing their duties as fathers. So I'm proud to say to you today that I'm the father of 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and my youngest son is a college professor. So thank you. And I, you know, me as a college professor, I could talk for hours, but I'm gonna stop right here.
Thank you, Dr.
Hey,
James.
Xavier,
Yes, ma'am.
can I add one more thing what Professor James said?
Yes, ma'am.
He mentioned that he worked in the sheriff's department in the programs office. My sister works in that department too. And people are so willing to like throw away our inmates and label them with all kinds of negative names. But I know for a fact, because my sister's been there for, golly, 10, 12 years or more, that in the Norfolk City Jail, in the GED department, as Dr. James stated, their GED program produces some of the highest scoring GED test takers in the entire city of Norfolk and sometimes in the state. And so we have to be very careful how we label people and how we just throw them away for mistakes that they make. And so when we start to talking about voting and restoration of rights, which is like a whole nother conversation, we have to have people who are advocating for restoration of rights, because we have just put people into pigeonholes who have a lot to offer our society, and all they did was make a mistake. And so I just want to add that, because Dr. James spoke about his time at the sheriff's office, and they do great work there.
Joining us is Mr. Cal O'Quinn. How you doing there, Mr. Quinn? O'Quinn?
How you doing? How you doing? I appreciate you guys for having me. Thanks for, inviting me on this. This is nice. I'm sorry I'm late.
No, you are fine. You are fine. We're going to jump right back to Dr. Perkins introducing himself.
Well, actually, I'm going to let Ms. Thomas introduce herself, then Cal, and I'll come back and answer the question.
Gotcha. Sounds like a plan.
Cool beans. Hello, everyone. My name's Simone Thomas. I'm hailing all the way from Killeen, Texas. Originally, I came down here. I'm recruited for volleyball. I'm on the Norfolk State volleyball team. I serve as the president of the Young Democrats on campus and the first vice president of the NAACP here. I am also the student representative on the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia for Norfolk State. I was just appointed that position a few weeks ago. I'm here. I'm happy to participate. This is my senior year. I'm happy to get involved in the community and hopefully stay out here on the East Coast. I'm sorry, I don't have all the accolades yet. Just give me like 20 years.
Like that.
Mr. O'Quinn?
Hi, guys. I'm Kyle O'Quinn. graduate of Norfolk State University, behold the green and gold, from New York City, by way of Virginia. Feel like I did most of my growing up in Norfolk and Virginia Beach area. Proud to say I'm a graduate of that university, currently playing for the Philadelphia 76ers and, enjoying my career as a, Spartan and as a young professional in this world.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you.
Okay, and I am Dr. Robert Perkins. I'm a professor of sociology here at Norfolk State University. I'm just happy to be on the panel. I did get my PhD from Iowa State University, but most relevant, I got my undergrad here at Norfolk State University. So I am a full-fledged Spartan. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you what year, but I did it. And and I also got my master's here in urban affairs, and it's just great to be on the panel. Xavier, I really appreciated the question you asked about Martin Luther King Jr., Congressman John E. Lewis, and Fannie Lou Hamer, and how they lost their lives for us to have the opportunity and the rights to vote. And your question is, what is our responsibilities, and how do we move forward with it? I have two angles to that. Number one, yes, vote. But I honestly think that's the least that you should do. The most that you should do is become an informed voter. Know what you're talking about, know the candidates, know their stance, know the direction you want, not only your country, but your city and your state to move in. And then finally, they didn't stop at voting. They put pressure on their elected officials. We need to do the same. I don't know when Black folks became so lazy about holding people accountable. I hold my folks accountable. Councilwoman Graves can tell you. I hold my folks accountable. And I still haven't gotten over the fact that we've still got tolls in the downtown tunnel. I'm still mad about that. And I'm upset about the direction this country is going in. I'm upset about the state of affairs in this country. But I am more upset about the fact that I still know people who refuse to register to vote. So I believe if Martin Luther King was here, he would say, know your stuff, go vote. I believe the same with John Lewis. And John Lewis would say, go make some good trouble and then vote. And Fannie Lou May would say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. We know what's going on today. We know what's happening in Louisville. We know what's happening in Minnesota. We know what's happening all over this great country of ours. Stand up, be a man, stand up, be a woman, stand up, be a good citizen, stand up and claim back America. Know what you're talking about, know what's out there, and vote, vote, vote.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perkins. Next, we have Mr. O'Quinn. I'm going to re-say the question for you. The question was, how important is it that we honor their sacrifices today by registering to vote and exercising our right to vote as often as possible?
When I get the topic of voting, as a younger person, I didn't have to deal with the pressure when I was younger because it was kind of like, you're so young, you're in college, blah blah blah. But now when it's hot, the iron, we call it the iron is hot. I like what Mr. Roberts said about just educating yourself and knowing what you need to know. It's one thing to push a message, whether it's social media and things like that. But if I'm challenging my white friends, my white teammates, my white coaches, white general managers to learn their stuff, I feel like I had to do the same. I feel like I wasn't educated enough, so it challenged myself. So voting is very important because, when you see movies and you have older people in your family and all the things they did to just get the opportunity to vote, you kind of, out of respect for them and all they had to sacrifice, you just want to use your, opportunity but at the same time, you don't want to use your opportunity if you don't know what's really going on. So it's like a double-edged sword. You have to educate yourself. And I would say, you know, I hated that in a time like this, and these last like 4 years really pushed the needle for me, but it has, and I've challenged myself to educate myself ultimately so I can educate people that were in my shoes that may know but not really know. So I'm a big advocate of voting. I push it, you know, but my biggest thing is trying to bridge the gap of education between not only young people, but white young people who, you know, they feel sorry, but I think if they knew more, they would understand more.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Quinn. Ms. Thomas?
Mr. O'Quinn, it's just funny you said that because my mother always used to tell me, if you knew better, you do better. So coming back to our question, coming from that younger perspective, I feel that there is a balance of honoring what our ancestors fought for and continuing to fight for what we have. In NAACP, we have this chant, you got to fight if you want to be free. That fight never stopped. Our ancestors, they didn't just give all of that just for us to say, somebody already did it. We don't have to do anything else anymore. But I'd also like to piggyback off of what Mr. O'Quinn said. Yes, you're out there to vote. Voting is great. But as Dr. Perkins said, that is the last thing on the list. Okay, bringing this back to sports. I'm on a team. If I know my plays, I know what I'm supposed to do when I wake up, but my teammate doesn't, the whole team's not straight. So if I'm out here representing this school in the Black community, like, okay, I'm voting, I'm out here in the community, I'm doing this, but is my friend, is my group of friends, are my colleagues that I work with, what are my peers doing? So we can't say that, okay, I'm going to vote, I'm all for voting, I'm doing this, I'm doing that or the third, but what are your friends doing? What is your peer group doing? So we're not all going to be, in my opinion, truly honoring what our ancestors did until we're all straight. We're all doing what we needed to do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. Going to question 3. African Americans received the right to vote by the 15th Amendment. Today, many believe that citizens are being affected by the new era of intimidation tactics, such as making it harder to vote by mail-in ballots and through early voting. How important is it for us as citizens to speak up against voter suppression tactics to help ensure the right to vote for everyone now and in the future? Ms. Graves.
Wow, so that's a mouthful of an answer to that question, because we can see with the 45th president of the United States that we can see voter intimidation from the top. And I still go back to that analogy of the rude salesperson with the rude manager. You know, people are going to think that whatever the leadership does is okay. He's the president. He should know. He should be right. And people will take, there are a large amount of people that will take his cue. And so we have to not only speak up against voter suppression, but what we also have to do, as Ms. Thomas said, is make sure our whole team is straight. What I heard from her was to be an influencer in your peer circle, in your peer group, whoever your peers are. Whatever you can't just be going to vote and then go hang out with a bunch of deadbeats that didn't vote and aren't registered, right? So we want to make sure that not only are we speaking up, but we also want to make sure that we are voting for people. We are taking the action after the words, and that is voting for people who are not going to treat Americans this way. Dr. James referenced the Constitution. We're not going to vote for people who are just going to stomp on the Constitution and act as though it doesn't matter and act as though they can just say it ain't so, and then the Constitution just goes away. We have to be mindful of the people that we're voting for when we vote in our elections. And so it is vitally important that not only that we speak up, but that we show up at the polls. I will tell you, one of the things that I am advocating for is additional police presence at our voting precincts and at our in-person voting locations so that people feel comfortable and they feel safe. And I will say this lastly, the United States Postal Service has been safe for the last, however, I don't even know how long they've been in existence, but however long they've been in existence since it was the Pony Express, they've been safe. Now, all of a sudden, it's not safe to vote by mail. Give me a break. We got to vote for people who are going to have everybody's best interest at heart, not just do what is right for their little circle of friends. I'm sorry, y'all asked me.
You're fine, Miss Gray. You are fine.
That one just gets under my skin.
There you go. You are fine. I love it. Dr. James?
You know, we know that, the 15th Amendment only gave, Black men, some Black men, the right to vote. But with that came the Jim Crow laws that put certain restrictions on voting, poll taxes. You have to be landowners and the like. It wasn't until the 1920s with the 19th Amendment that women had the right to vote. And then Jim Crow laws were still in place in the 1920s. And the Jim Crow laws was not only put in place to restrict people for the right to vote, but it was to keep certain classes of people out of political offices. And so it was also an attempt to intimidate people in our society. Someone once said that as a society, we must sound the alarm once an evil design is discovered. And so when persons with unjust intentions start to get together, then people with good intentions like ourselves have to associate also. We know there was Edmund Burke that said that the only thing that is necessary for triumph, for evil, for the triumph of evil, is for good people to do nothing. Those people who want to do evil and unjust things are expecting us to do the same thing we did 4 years ago and not show up and vote. Because I guarantee you, rain, snow, sleep or hail, they're gonna be there. Whether it's a ballot or absentee ballot, they're gonna definitely be there. And so we need to take a good understanding and a good look at ourselves and ask ourselves, do we wanna reverse all the things that Dr. King and others, and even our leaders here in the city of Norfolk, all the things that they've done to pave the way for us to have equality, the right to vote, the right to get the fair and equal pay. Those things can be reversed if we become complacent and we don't vote.
I agree with Professor James 100%, and also always agree with Councilwoman Graves. And we love that spirit about you. I do want to answer the question, but I also want to address Latoya Waller. She put a question in the chat box. How do we educate ourselves about each candidate? Where I start is literally on the website with the Department of Elections, the Virginia Department of Elections. They should have each district, each zip code and all that stuff, and which candidates are voting. And you usually can click on their name and it'll take you to their website, and they would have all of their issues, what they stand for, their platform. Some of them will not have their party affiliation. You can find that in a Department of, on the same website, Virginia Department of Elections. So I encourage all people to go there and find out who is running in your district and also who's running in. And a shameless plug, Norfolk State will be hosting the State of Virginia Senator elections. Both candidates will be on October the 3rd, I believe. And it's going to be on campus and it's going to be virtual as well. And I think Channel 10 will be covering it as well. So there's a lot going on during this election cycle, and I'm happy that Norfolk State is participating in it. So Ms. Waller, start off with the Virginia Department of Elections. And once I'm done answering the question, Ms. Graves will probably pipe back in and tell you how you can find more about your local officials and who they're voting for. Now I forgot the question, Xavier. What was it?
I got you. 1 second. How important is it for us? Oh,
voter suppression. Got it.
Yes,
yeah, voter suppression. First of all, this is not new. Voter suppression has been happening ever since others got the right to vote. But what is different is that they used to respect us enough to be slick with it. Now they're doing it right in our faces. They're telling us how they're going to suppress our vote. They're openly showing us how they're going to prevent or try to prevent us from getting to the polls. They are now hiring people and I know in the city of Virginia Beach, to line up outside of the voting areas in the courthouse to try to intimidate people from voting. When you see these mechanisms and these strategies in place, that's when you should know I'm going to get to that poll all I know how. So COVID is not stopping me from voting. I've already declared that if I got to put on a hazmat suit, I'm voting, okay? I don't care if they move every post office box, if they close every post office, I am voting. I don't care if my vehicles break down, I need to lose weight anyway, I will walk to the voting poll and I will vote. So we have no excuse. I don't care what tactics that they employ. I don't care how they try to intimidate. I don't care what mechanism and strategies they employ. That should only fuel your fire more. And I like what Ms. McCoy said in the comments. Give it all you got. That's what we have to do. This is serious business. There is no such thing as suppression in my point of view. There's only attempts at suppression. If we suffered centuries of oppression, we can deal with this suppression and get to the polls and vote.
I like that.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Mr. O'Quinn?
I think like you said, and I'm always gonna kind of like go back to the same thing of the education part, simply because younger people, I just feel like not enough young people know, and like Ms. Thomas said, you can know, but if your peers don't know, you're just as bad as them, you're just one of many that walking around blind, so I'm always gonna bring every point back to education, but if you knew the education, you would know to push through the suppression of voting, do whatever you got, walk to the poll, the world is so convenient for us right now. It's at the click of a finger, email list, text message that, social media that. If they take that away, I feel like a lot of my peers may say, well, I'll wait next one. I'll wait till the next one and blame it on COVID, but you hang out outside and you ain't thinking about COVID. You know what I mean? We just find excuses, I think, as, I say the 30 and under crew. But I just think the education, if you know what you need to know, you'll take the approach of if my vehicle's not working, I'm walking, because that's how important it is for my vote to be cast. So I think that you have to know enough to just get through it. You got to get through it. The opportunity is there, but they're just going to try to hold you back from your opportunity, just like most things in this world. But a lot of things we have to just get through to continue to push the needle for many, many people to come behind us. So I'm going to just say, like Mr. Perkins said, just push through and don't let that really. You said a little quote at the end. We went through so many years of oppression. Finish it off for me.
We went through centuries of oppression. We can deal with a little bit of suppression.
I love it. I love it. I'm rolling with that one. I'm rolling.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Quinn.
Yeah.
Ms. Thomas?
And it's a great point to always go back to education, especially when talking about voter suppression. You can go out to you can go out to the streets, Virginia Beach Boulevard, you're out here by the schools, you'll ask these children like, okay, what's voter suppression? And you're not gonna get very, very many right answers. So it always goes back to voter suppression, what it looks like, what it is, who it's targeted to in your community. That's very important, but also it's the want to. Of course, we can push out as much education as we want. We can have these events, we can have these drives, but unless this generation wants to actively get out and fight against it and not just, okay, this is happening to me, I'm gonna post about it on social media, I'm gonna like, tweet, and reshare this, but I'm not gonna actively get out, teach my friends a little something, take a group of people to the polls, then what are we doing? I bring this quote up in almost any panel that I'm in concerning like basically anything voting. Jackie Glass, one of my favorite activists, she will say it's not about the politics, it's about the policy implemented. And once we educate these people on the policy, we have to make them want to care about the policy that is implemented against them, and that's when we're going to see a change. So voter suppression, yeah, it's a huge problem, and as it's been said, it's right in front of our faces. Like, I don't see how much clearer it can be, and it's nothing new. It's just, what are we going to do? We know what our ancestors did, we know what MLK did, we know what Malcolm X did. What are we going to do? That's the question that I have, like, for this generation.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Topic 4, 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed all women the right to vote in America. Also, women, especially African-American women across the country, have run for political office in record numbers. Question, what do you believe is the impact and importance of this trend on young African-American women today? Ms. Graves.
So I just believe it's a woman's world. We just let men run it. But
Let me mute
it
myself.
really is. When I first ran for office, I was one woman in the pool of 4, and the other 3 were men. And so what was ironic to me is I had women who were saying, well, you know, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? You're so young. And so I was like, well, let one of the dudes drop out. I'm not going anywhere. And so I think as women, we have always realized we had to do what we had to do in order to vote. And we had to do what we had to do in order to hold things down. And so that's why I say it's a woman's world. We just let men run it. You know, I really, the whole like Me Too movement and the woman's right to vote. I mean, I forget the name of the movie, but it's the movie that kind of talks about the women's suffrage and how they said we were crazy. They said women were crazy, and they put us in insane asylums, and they electrocuted our brains with electroshock therapy because we wanted to vote. And so I go back to, if it wasn't so important, why are you trying to keep me from doing it? If it wasn't so important, why are you trying to take it away? Why are you finding every reason, from gender to race to land ownership, when we couldn't even own land? How you gonna vote if land ownership is the requirement and you can't even own land? It doesn't make any sense. And so as women, I think that we have an extra responsibility, and that goes for white women as well as Black women, because men are telling us what we can do with our bodies. Men are telling us how we should and shouldn't be. Men are making these rules that they don't have to live by and they don't have to live with. And I'd be doggone if I need some man telling me what it is that I should and should not be doing. I was born with good sense. I educated myself, and I know how to make a decision. And so if women don't get out here and vote, Black women, white women, Latino women, we're gonna look up in 4 more years and go, oh my God, what happened? And people don't start realizing what has happened until it happens to them, until something happens that they care about. It happens to one of their friends, it happens to one of their family members. You know, one of the things people always like to say, well, you know, that doesn't include me, or, you know, I'm not a part of that group, and I'm not a part of this group. And so eventually you're gonna be part of a group. And if you're a woman with all these men making rules and making laws and all that for you, we're gonna go back to the days where they got us barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen, and ain't gonna be nothing we can do about it because we didn't vote.
Thank you, Ms. Graves. It's okay.
Ask these questions.
All righty, and Dr. James.
Thank you. You know, in the United States today, and in the greatest country on earth, in order for our countries to survive, it requires the smartest and the brightest people, regardless of whether they're male or females. Full stop. The idea that we have a gender that is smarter than another gender is, I don't want to say the word, is not true. Women have been leading the country ever since the beginning of mankind. And not only that, I want to say this. If you look back in history, women has always been the stable part of the family unit. And I give women full credit for that. We are all persons and should be judged only by the content of our character. And until we reach that point where every person is equal, men and women, and treated the same, not only in the workplace, but in government and the like, our country still has a long ways to go. But I think we're heading in the right direction because we do have women involved in government and doing a great job. And 4 years ago, we almost had the first women president.
Yeah, it's I am still flabbergasted that that's still a topic of discussion. That still just boggles my mind. My Uncle Charlie, who was married for 50 years to my Aunt Annabelle, came home for vacation, and we all were around them, and they were just talking, and we were just absorbing all the knowledge from this old couple that got it right. And one of my cousins said, "You guys have a successful marriage." And Uncle Charlie said, "We had a successful marriage because I'm the head of the household. And I'm the head of my household because Aunt Annabelle said so." So that partnership and that understanding and the nuance of gender inequality that persists today, to me, is just simply nonsensical. If anybody know me or knew me several years ago, I was an avid supporter of Hillary Clinton. And I was very hurt when she did not win. I think she had the chops, the knowledge, and she was well prepared for the office. She put 36 million cracks in that glass ceiling. And I'm looking forward to Kamala Harris breaking through. I'm looking forward to it. And for Miss Waller again, Miss Graves, Councilwoman Graves did respond to your question about the mail-in ballot, whether or not it is as safe. It is safe. It is very safe. But I would like to know, Ms. Waller, are you voting in the state of Virginia or not? If you are voting in the state of Virginia, the polls are open. You can actually go to the courthouse and place your vote, and you don't have to mail it in. You know that it's counted. It really depends on what state it is. Some states only count mail-in votes if the election is close. I personally rather cast my vote so I know that it is absolutely counted in that moment. But I will also say, and Ms. Vaughn wants us to stress the importance of young people voting. Young people, this is your world. We're checking out. If you want a world that is built for you, that you can succeed in, not only should you vote, but you should encourage your parents to vote to make sure that your world is secured. Because sometimes us older folk, and I'm not old yet, but for the folks that are, sometimes they think a little different. They still thinking back in the 60s and 50s, and you know, here we are in 2020. So not only do we need you to vote and your peers to vote, but we need you to encourage your parents to vote as well, specifically that 60 plus and older. And as for you, Ms. Green, I'll let Ms. Thomas, when she speaks next, take up your question. But I just wanted to reiterate before I pass it on that if you cast your vote thinking that only a man can do the job, you have been living under a rock for over 500 years. It's time to stop.
Dr. Perkins, I'm gonna jump in right quick on your voter question, on the voter question. Every ballot is counted in Virginia, whether or not it is a close election or not. So if you have requested a mail-in ballot and you decide that you want to go and vote either at the city hall precinct, where we have early no excuse voting, or if you want to go to one of the 4 locations that will be open as of October 12th, take that absentee ballot with you so that you don't have any type of provisionary ballot issues, because they're not going to allow you to vote twice. There is a record that is kept of everyone who requests an absentee ballot. And so if you take that ballot with you, then they can invalidate that ballot, give you an in-person ballot to register to vote with, and then you can cast your vote. But mail-in voting is very much still safe, but if you want to go, you can. And every ballot, they're just not counted until election night, but every ballot that is cast is counted in Virginia.
I have a question for you, Councilwoman Graves.
Yes.
Why can't I have a receipt for my vote?
I don't know. I really don't know
have
the
an
answer
issue.
to that question.
I really have an issue about that. I get a receipt when I go and buy a penny candy. I get a receipt when I go and do anything in this country. I get a receipt to say, you paid this, you gave us this currency, and this was your change. And this is validation that your purchase was purchased. There is nothing that I have purchased yet worth more than my vote. So I want to know why I can't get a receipt to say that Robert Perkins voted on this day for this. And if anything go crazy, I can bring my receipt back and say, this is who I voted for. So as a councilwoman, can you please take that back to every politician you know and tell them that we want a receipt for our votes? Because I don't really know what happens after I push in their card. I really don't. But if you gave me my receipt, I can always go back. Just like I took one of these earpieces back the other day, I will go back and tell them they did not count my vote correctly. I'm sorry, Ms. Thomas.
If you think about it, a few years ago, we had the situation with the voter who they added something and they took something away, and then it was really literally like a one vote. The election for state House of Delegates came down to like one vote, and they were able to identify from the barcoding who that woman was who cast that vote, and they were able to go back to her. So there is a record that ties your vote to you, but I understand what you're saying with regard to getting something in your hand that is tangible that said you completed the process.
And it would be cheaper than those stickers that say I've voted.
Can I add to the conversation that for young people, particularly young people that don't believe that their vote counts, it was not too long ago when we had the General Assembly to put names in a fishbowl and pull names out of a fishbowl because there was a tie election. Now, I know that both of those candidates wish they had one more person to vote for them, but they wouldn't have to take chances of pulling names out of a fishbowl.
Yeah.
So if you don't believe every vote counts, I'm telling you it does.
Yep. Yep.
Mr. O'Quinn?
So when it comes to women, in this world, I came from a 2-family household, but, my dad, he did a great job. Damn good daddy. I swear he is. But the house would have been crumbled if my mom didn't do what she did, So I always say, we all give credit to my mom. And when, when I would walk tall and represent the household, my dad will always say, if it wasn't for Gina, I don't know what that boy would be doing. So just watching him give credit to my mom and, all around the house, they go, and is now, with the way the world is, it's like, how do we change? Young kids young parents want to see like a guy that has influence on their kid help. And I say all the time, it starts if you got 20 houses in a community and you got 20 women running each household, how come you can't have some women running this country? So that's how I look at it. You understand? You know what I mean? That's just me giving a lot of respect to, not only my mom, but the women that helped my mom raise me, and as my dad being around doing everything, keeping the lights on and everything in this house, he always gave credit back to my mom every chance he got. And my mom never really wanted it, but I'm sure she appreciated it. And I think that, women have that power to do so once they get the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Quinn. Ms. Thomas?
Oh, this might be one of my favorite topics because I love, and I say this a lot, I love seeing Black women shine in white places. And when I say that, I grew up in a community where we reserved our Black female leaders. We had those. I was taught to honor them. My great-grandmothers on maternal and my father's side is Etta Mae and Fannie Mae. I knew those names before I knew my street address. I knew what they did for our family, where they brought us from, their children, their children's children. And it just goes to show that Black women in this country, we are alert, we are moving up, and we know how to get where we need to go. At this point, it's just people standing in our way. And I know, and it kind of irks me, maybe it's the Gen Z coming out in me, the younger generation, y'all's generation. You mean the future of America. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get people like me, people like Xavier, people like Mr. O'Quinn, we're trying to get up there. So, and I say this to the older generation, when you're talking about what we're not doing and what we could do better, look at what your generation set us up with to begin with. And I know, I'm sorry, I saw Dr. Perkins' eyes, but as you said, you're on your way out, but you need to look at how you left the house. And it's a mess right now. That's just to say, while y'all are like, oh, look at what y'all are doing, look at what y'all are not doing, look at what you've done. And that's pretty much, that's all I got for right now. And to answer Ms. Green's question, I don't have any children yet. Don't plan to anytime soon, but something that my parents did with me and involving me in the political process is sitting down and talking to your children. You know your child better than anybody else in their maturity level, and you'd be surprised at what kids know. My little sister is 9, and why does she know like 5 people on 45's cabinet right now, and what's going on, and who Breonna Taylor is, and what happened to her? Sissy, why did they shoot that woman in her sleep? Me, what? Why do you know that? It's just starting that open dialogue with your children right now and not trying to shelter them or baby them about it, because this is the world that they are going to grow up into. There's no sense of trying to sugarcoat it. But of course, like, based on their age and maturity and the relationship with them, it's just starting that open dialogue so that way they can articulate their response to whatever's going on in the world outside of your household. That's just what my parents did with me, sitting and forcing me to watch those debates, those inaugural addresses, and things like that. And reading books like MLK's and Malcolm X's. Like, I had to read Roots one summer in less than 2 weeks, like the whole book. So those are ways.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Jumping to our last topic. This year, states are providing many options for voting, such as early voting, mail-in ballots, and day of voting. Question: how do you plan to vote this year and why? Ms. Graves.
My husband and I are going to go to one of the early voting polls and vote. They open in Norfolk in October 12th, and wherever you are, whatever city that you're in, I encourage you to find out where your not only your one early in-person voting location may be, but the General Assembly did approve several other early in-person voting locations. And I recall having a conversation, or at least looking at a conversation with someone who was complaining about what polling places we didn't have and what locations we didn't have. Well, get up and go to the location that we do have, because complaining about what we didn't have, this is the very first year in Virginia that we have had multiple locations for early voting. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the first year we've had early voting with no excuse. Before, you had to lie about why you couldn't be why you couldn't vote in order to in-person vote with an excuse. And I still go back to, if voting was not so important, if your participation in mass numbers, young people, middle-aged people, elderly people, senior citizens, if it wasn't so important, they wouldn't be trying to keep you from doing it. It is super important for you to get out and vote. So I plan to, again, vote early at the Jordan Newby Library, to be exact. My husband has asked me 511 times, when can we go? And I'm like, October the 12th, we're gonna be right there line looking to cast our vote at the Jordan Newby Library. But I will say this, I think that until we value every life, and I'm that from the standpoint, we value Black lives, but we value women's lives. We value Black women's lives, because when they say women vote, I'm not trying to water down the part for Black women, but that was all women that couldn't vote. They were carting off all women. And so I don't understand these women who want to side with people who thought we were crazy. But we need to ensure that everybody has value, what your perspective is. And I like what Ms. Thomas said. I spent some time in Killeen, Ms. Thomas, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It reminds me of Suffolk. But when you said your generation is working with the generation generation, and generation behind me have left you. You're absolutely right. So we do have to change our and when we're talking about young people, because young people have value, because they are the individuals who are going to run the country. And we need to be nice to them because we're old and we're going to them. But we're going to run our country, and we do have to make sure that every person's perspective is valued. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that women belong in every room where decisions are made, it's because every decision that's made affects a woman. And so we need to have a place in there so that we can be at the table and not on the menu. So I'm gonna vote early at Jordan Newby Library in Norfolk. If you want to know more about where the Norfolk early voting sites are, you can visit www.norfolk.gov/election. And that's ELECTION. So it's norfolk.gov/election. And that will take you directly to the State Board of Elections page for the city of Norfolk. And it has all of our information there with regard to early in-person voting that's going on right now, as well as the 4 locations and the times that we will have starting October 12th.
Thank you, Ms. Graves. Dr. James?
Yes, when it comes down to, I'm gonna talk about one of the early questions. When it comes down to teaching children, how to be involved in the electoral process and the vote, it is very important that when parents vote, they need to take their children with them so they can see that voting process.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes here in Norfolk, we have children voting, where children can participate in the voting process and they can experience that. And then once the children see the parents voting, they're gonna ask questions. And it's gonna encourage them to be anxious about when they turn 18 so they can vote. As for me this year, in honor of our civil rights leaders of the past, it is my intentions to get up as early as possible on election day. Rain, snow, sleep or hail, long lines or short lines, and represent our people at the polls. I'm gonna encourage all my family and friends to vote either early, absentee, I don't care how you do it. I'm gonna encourage each and every one of them to vote. And on election morning, if there's any of my family or friends or children that haven't voted, I'm taking them with me to the polls. That's what my plans are on election day.
Thank you so much, Dr. James. Dr. Perkins?
Yes, I plan to also be at the polls on voting day. I've already reserved my hazmat suit, foot shots, a special pen, whatever I need. I just love partaking in elections on election day. That's something I love. And I do know where my voting site I live in Virginia Beach, and it's at the Salem High School, and that's where I would be. And when I cast my vote, I understand that I'm casting my vote about 16, 19. So I'm casting my vote about women's rights. I know my vote. My nieces, brother James, I'm there with you to cast my vote. Nothing. But I've instructed my family to roll that bed to cast my vote. And now, with that said, if the day before, if the spirit moves me, I might do it the day before on the voting day, and I'm excited about voting. I do believe that this, and I know everybody on the panel is probably going to say this because we hear it too often, but I truly believe this is the most important vote of my lifetime. I truly believe that. Okay, you dropped off for a second. Where are you voting, Kyle? Where are you going to vote?
Mr. O'Quinn? Oh. I think it was. Oh, am I on mute? Oh, no. I'm sorry, guys.
Can you guys hear me? Because you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes.
But this year, I can't see you guys for some reason. I have a question on my screen. Next. But you guys can hear me. But so this year, I'm doing a mail-in ballot, and like I always go back to, the team kind of handled it while we were away from our home cities, because like you said, they'll do anything to stop you from voting, and they were tying up our home addresses with our addresses from the city we play in, and they were basically saying, like, we don't care if they're doing their jobs, pretty much entertaining, we need an address. So the team hired officials to kind of like get us through the process of the pressure on the ownership, and ownership obviously is majority white. And like I said, we said earlier, if they knew better, they do better. And I think they kind of took the approach of they gave us enough respect to learn how hard it is for us to vote because of who we are. So they were trying to take our right to vote, I guess, or make it not as convenient. But the team kind of signed up and made it easy, and everybody's registered to vote on the team, especially like the young guys that didn't have no clue, fresh out of college, but of age to vote. So I think the team did a great job, but we also had to sit down and talk to them as grown men and educate them on how inconvenient it is for us to vote simply because we are playing, this season.
Thank you, Mr. O'Quinn. Ms. Thomas?
So this year I'll be voting via absentee because, of course, I'm from Texas. I will not be voting here in Virginia, but I will be a student poll worker. So as you see me at the library or wherever they decide to place me, I'll be there in support.
And
Texas needs your vote, girl. Texas needs your vote.
Right.
I know we have Julie Oliver out there. I've been working hard with her and other Austin people. It's been pretty rough, but we're looking kind of purple right now. So it's a start.
And that concludes Your Vote is Your Voice. Don't be silent. Dr. Perkins, I see you unmuted yourself.
Oh,
yeah.
It was literally an accident.
Oh, I thought I was like, I was ready for you. That concludes everything, and thank you guys so much. Is there any additional comments, questions, Drop them in the chat, please. X away while we still have everybody. Comments, but this was great, and y'all informed me on a lot of things, and I thank you guys so much.
Hey, excuse me, Mr. Andrew.
Yes.
Maybe Professor James can put his contact information in the chat box if they have any question about the Constitution.
Yes.
And Councilwoman Graves can do the same thing if they have additional questions about where to go or
Yes.
who's on the ballot or whatever.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In the-
Absolutely. And you can find the council information on the norfolk.gov website. There's a link for city council members. And it also, I'll put my contact information there. But you can also find our information there, and you can follow us. Our council meetings are televised now. They had not always been that way. And so now you can, and the minutes to our council meetings weren't always on the website. And so now you can go back and you can research candidates, and you can see how they or council members, you can see how they voted, what they voted for, what their ideology is in real time as things play out. So I encourage everyone to listen to our council meetings and watch them, or go back and do the replay, because it is very important what happens there, because it directly affects every single individual.
Can I say one other thing also?
Where's Dr. James?
Sure. I want to say that to all the Norfolk State students out there and all the young people out there that's listening, that we are very proud of you. We're proud of the things that you're doing today. We are proud of how you're representing us in all our colleges and universities.
Yeah.
And we know that you guys are going to do great things. I'm not concerned about the future that's ahead of us, because I know that we have some young, smart, bright people that are technology savvy, and you're going to take this country to the 22nd century. And so I have no concerns or fears in my heart. So thank you, and I'm very, very proud of all of you.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
Thank you for joining us for the 5th installment in Picking Up the Pieces, Healing Our Community. A recording of this event will be available on Norfolk State University's YouTube channel. The previous events regarding the coronavirus, mental health awareness, de-escalating tense interactions with law enforcement, and racism are currently available on the YouTube channel. Again, we want to thank you for joining us this evening. Next week, you can join us at the same time and the same Zoom link for our final session in the program, which is entitled Forever Change, A Time for Healing. Where do we begin? And it will be moderated, by Mrs. Sharon Houston. So again, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.